here's the hard truth. The world does not get ordered by default. It gets ordered because somebody with enough power, enough reach, enough money, enough naval capacity, and enough industrial gravity is willing to underwrite it. So the premise that a looser, more or equal, fully multipolar system would naturally become calm as fundamental flawed. History does not show that. I mean, history shows something else. When major powers transition accelerate and no credible stabilizer can enforce basic rules, the usual output are coercion, protectionism, arm races, proxy conflicts, and eventually direct collision. So this is not a moral judgment, it's a systems judgment. So and look at the actual structure of the current system. And the United States remains the largest military spender by a vast margin. So if PRI put US military spending at 997 billion in 2024, around 37% of foreign military expenditures and 3.2 times China's level. So the United States is also still the central node in reserve finance, trade, invoicing, alliance architecture, and frontier technology. That means American power is not just one actor among many. It is the load-bearing beam. Remove the decorative panel and the building still stands, right? And remove the beam and the whole structure starts taking stories in places most people never even look. So the argument here is not that every American decision has been wise, that would be absurd. The argument is narrower, cooler, and more important. Pax Americana is not primarily a story about virtue, it's a story about throughput. It's the reason capital can move, insurance can price risk, shipping can assume passage, allied state can underwrite independent nuclear deterrence. Technology ecosystem can scale across first sites and aggressions. Aggressors must calculate against a coalition rather than against isolated targets. If their architecture weakens substantially, the replacement is not an elegant concert of civilizations. The replacement is harsher markets of force. So this strips away the romance around multipolarity. When people say multipolar world, they usually mean a world in which no single state dominates. So everyone is forced to compromise. Sounds balanced, sounds restrained, sounds civilized. This is just a problem. The historical record is graveyard for this theory. I mean, National Defense University survey of past great power competition found that the vast majority of major power transition over the last 5 centuries involved direct graveyard clashes, and it cites the Allison case files founding the 12 of 16 major rising power versus ruling power rivals in the war. That doesn't prove war is inevitable. It proves that the baseline is danger, not harmony. And the post-1945 record matters here as well. So there has been no direct Great War since 1945, a phenomenon widely recognized in the literature as a long peace, even though the world has remained violent in many other ways. Our world and data shows that conflict deaths in recent decades have generally been far below the level seen in the first half of the 20th century, right? And that interstate relationships have become markedly more cooperative over time. So that doesn't mean that the world became pacifist. It means that the top layer of systems stopped producing world war scale collisions. That's an enormous difference. And anybody pretending otherwise is playing semantic games within history slaughter. Now, to be precise, American power is not the only reason for that outcome. Nuclear deterrence matters. European integration matters a lot. Institutions matters. Local agency matters. But here's where the arithmetic gets serious. I mean, this exchange didn't flow down from heaven. NATO, Bretton Woods, that was not very good. The post-war trading order, oceanic security guarantees, dollar liquidity, and the alliance step there, all built inside an American system. So NDU's summary is blunt on the underlying logic. The hard power capabilities and willingness of a dominant state are what underwrite system-wide rules and norms. And without that enforcement, cooperative arrangement tends to degrade under anarchy. That's a structural case in one sentence. I mean, that brings us to the stability paradox. The calmer a US-led order looks, the more people assume it's unnecessary. The fact that a German or Japanese company can ship components through contested water without maintaining its own blue water navy becomes proof. I mean, in the mind of some critics, that navies are overrated. The fact that Europe avoided another total war becomes a proof that literary strategy are outdated. I mean, the fact that the dollar remains dominant because becomes proofs that monetary trust is automatic. No, those are not arguments against the architecture. Those are the dividends of the architecture. Yeah, I mean, you do not call fire insurance uh, unless because the house doesn't burn down the sea. So once the architecture starts eroding, the systems becomes more expensive fast. So IPRI found that world military expenditure reached 2.716 billion, a trillion, not billion, in 2024, the steepest annual rise since at least 1988, with armed insecurity spreading across regions. PRIO and USTP likewise reported that 2024 saw the highest number of state-based armed conflicts in more than 7 decades. In plain English, I would say that the world is already becoming more violent at the edge. That's not what a serene transition into balanced multipolar harmony looks like. That is what stress accumulation looks like. So now we get into really unappreciated part. I mean, the U.S. security rule is not separate from the global economy. It's part of the writing of the global economy. It starts with money. I mean, let's start money. IMF call for data for the fourth quarter of 2025 put the US dollar at 56.77% of the allocated global foreign exchange reserve. So the euro was 20.25%. So the renminbi was at 1.95%. The Federal Reserve 2025 review says that dollars will continues to far exceed American share of the world GDP and trade. That over half of the countries had currencies anchored to the dollar in 2019, and that the dollar appears on about 68% of global foreign exchange transactions. That's not normal national currency, that's system infrastructure. And if you want payment line, the number are just loop side. I mean, the SWIFT renminbi tracker for July 2025, I believe, put the dollar at 47.94% of global payment value, the euro at 23.11%, and the renminbi at 2.88%. So excluding intra-Eurozone payment, the dollar's share was 59.59%, and the renminbi was about 2.11%. So the ECB's New York trade invoicing works similarly shows that the dollar and euro together account for more than 80% of the global trade invoicing. So when people talk loosely about post-dollar order, the first question is simple. With what pipes? With what legal debt? With what collateral pool? And with what institutional trust? And with what security guarantor behind it? At the moment, there is no serious answer. So now connect money to trade. I mean, WTO says the world trade volume is roughly 45 times of the level recorded in 1950. The UNCTAD notes that around 80% of the world trade volume and 70% of the world trade value moved by sea. What does it mean? It means that the default condition of modern prosperity is not merely low tariffs, it's expectation that cargo can transit predictable sea lanes and the rule that powerful states are generally discouraged from closing by force. The world's richest supply chain are not actually frictionless. They are heavily subsidized by deterrence, surveillance, convoy capacity, maritime law enforcement, and any equivalent of retaliation. The subsidy is mostly invisible. I mean, until somebody tries to break it, right? And when the guarantee weakens, I mean, locally the cost shows up immediately. IMF quarterly data shows that in the first 2 months of 2024, trade through the Suez Canal fell by 50% year on year, while ships rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope added 10 days or more on average. So CSIS noted that Europe Asia diversion is increased shipping time by 30 to 50%. So a later World Bank brief that found that by late December 2024, traffic through Suez Canal and Bab el Mandeb had plummeted by around 3/4 versus historical norms, even as the choke point previously carried nearly a third of world container traffic. This is the bill for insecurity that was generated by a non-state actor operating from one corner of the map. So imagine a world where multiple revisionist states starting testing sea lane denial simultaneously. Doesn't look good for you. Not for me. This is also why freedom of navigation is not the same American hobby horse. I mean, The US freedom of navigation programs exist because excessive maritime claims, if normalized, become tool boot backed by missiles. So if by 24 operational challenge summer list Chinese claims of historic roads in the South China Sea among excessive maritime claims to the United States challenge alongside other unlawful restriction elsewhere, that matters because the choice is not between Americans or presence and legal authority. The choice is often between a contested common and a coerced commons. So market prefer the former, authoritarian revisionists prefer the later. So, so then what power vacuums actually look like? I mean, fighting morale is in the South Sea, in the South China Sea, when deterrence looks patchy, coercion, and scams. So 2016, arbitrary ruling in the Philippines case found major elements of China's South Sea claim, including the nine-dash line and related activities in the Philippine waters, right? It was unlawful. Beijing didn't accept the ruling and said deepened presence at sea. So AMTI reports that China has maintained a permanent coast guard personnel at Scarborough Shoal since 2012, and that its patrols, their average 95 ship days per month in the first month of 2025, nearly double the late 2024 average. So between August 2024 and May 2025, Chinese and Philippine law enforcement vessels interacted there on 121 days. That's what multipolar management looks like in practice, not equilibrium, but cumulative pressure. And it goes more serious. I mean, the AMTI 2026 survey found that China maritime militia are 241 vessels per day across monitor South Sea China features in 2025, the highest level yet recorded. Reuters also reported the Philippines and the United States held their seventh joint maritime drills in the South Sea China in June 2025, explicitly to deepen interoperability, right, in line with international law. The point is not that the joint drills create friction. The point is that China's coercion created the demand for counter-coalition. Absent credible external balance, smaller states do not become relaxed neutrals. They either bandwagon, arm frantically, or invite outside protection. I mean, this makes us to go with the fact number 2. And what's that? In Eastern Europe, the line between security guarantee and the absence of the one is virtually visible. I mean, NATO's summary says that Russia allegedly illegally annexed Crimea in 2014 and launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, which is obviously a war, not a military operation, is blatant violation of international law. NATO also says that since 2022, it has placed over 40,000 troops under direct command on its western and eastern flank, backed by significant air and also naval assets on over 500,000 high readiness forces. Here is the influence from these facts. The frontier where the US-led guarantees are explicit. It's not the frontier Russia selected for full-scale conventional invasion. I mean, understanding this is very simple. The frontiers where guarantees were tuner or absent, like Georgia in 2008, Ukraine in 2014 and 2022, were the frontiers that burned. And that matters for democratic resilience. Russia's strategy is not just territorial. NATO describes it as a campaign to establish spheres of influence through coercion, subversion, aggression, attempted annexation, cyber operation, disinformation, and political influence. All of them are correct. And that means that the issue is not merely tank columns. It's built your country on the edge of democratic world where not are allowed to make sovereign choices without facing organized sabotage. Remove American-backed deterrence from the equation and the politics in the states ceases to be normal politics. It becomes a contest conducted under the shadow of blackmail. Democracies can survive a lot, did not survive indefinitely when every election, port, bank, pipeline, and telecom network is being leveraged by our nearly imperial power. Russia. So now let's talk about a little bit about the fact number 3. The Middle East. Retrenchment doesn't produce self-organizing order. It produces militias, right? Chop, Middle East. I just see this a lot. And external opportunities. So the Red Sea is the cleanest example. IMF data showed that the Suez route carrying about 50% of the global maritime trade volume under normal conditions becomes before attacks forced rerouting, right? So the World Bank later found Suez and also Bab el Mandeb traffic down by roughly three-fourths versus norms by late 2024. So the CSIS documented that even Operation Prosperity Guardian didn't fully deter repeat attacks with Maersk reportedly suspending Red Sea transits. So if partial separation already imposes major costs, full abduction would amount of tax on the world economy collected by whichever armed group can menace, right? The narrowest passage. And if you want the micro collapse case, there is there is nobody. There is one nobody. Honestly, yeah, there is one nobody could romanticize. I mean, Afghanistan after 2021 withdrawal. The World Bank says August 2025 triggered a sharp contraction, loss of access to the international banking system, and the collapse in an aggregate demand as aid fell away. Its development update reported GDP contraction of 20%, 20.7% in 2021 and 6.2% 2022. So Human Rights Watch and the UN reporting that then documented that systematic rollback of women's rights, media freedom, and education, with Afghanistan remaining the only country where the girls and women were barred from secondary and university education. This is what a vacuum looked like, and not pluralism. It's not neutrality. It's a Taliban rule. So here, after all this, there's another issue, and that's the technology security for its scale, right? So now for the mistake, a lot of analysts still make. We talk about technology as if it were floating above geopolitics. It's not. Technology depends on capital markets, sanctions power, research, ecosystems, secure sea lanes, trusted legal and jurisdiction, and protect production nodes. Let's start with research and development. I mean, the U.S. National Science Foundation reports that the United States accounted for 30% of the global research and development in 2022 versus China's 27%, with the top right R&D performance making up 82% of the world total. Stanford looks like a standard. The Stanford 2025 AI Index also says that US-based institution produced 40 notable AI models in 2024 versus 15 from China and 3 from Europe, while the US private AI investment reached 109.1 billion in 2024, nearly 12 times China's level. This is not just a leadership, this is a scale capital intensity and also ecosystem density. And by the way, Elon Musk today became a trillionaire. But here is the crucial point. I mean, the innovations that inside the security map. Trade, government states that Taiwan accounts for over 60% of the global foundry revenue and more than 90% of the leading chip manufacturer. The OECD 2025 semiconductor value chain mapping worms that the chain is highly concentrated, deeply interdependent, and increasingly vulnerable, with trade dependence more doubling from 2012 14 to 2022. Nor half of the semiconductor intermediate output going to China. So the most advanced technology in the free world are being designed largely by in a US-led ecosystem, fabricated of through a highly exposed allied jurisdiction of truly through globally consistent logistic arteries. So security is not adjacent to that change. Security is the precondition for that change, for a change. So now, at course pressures that the Pentagon 2025 report say that Beijing treat Taiwan also sovereignty claims as a core interest, while CSIS tracking shows China conducted largest scale military exercise around Taiwan 2025 and expanded military activity across the South China Sea and broader Indo Pacific. If American influence in East Asia erodes, the immediate consequence is not merely a military one. It's the command point of advanced manufacturing, AI hardware, AI supply chains move deeper into the coercive shadow of an authoritarian state, which means China, if you translate what I mean. That means more export controls by force, more political conditionality, and more self-censorship by fear. And more is that direction also over the technologies that are developed, sold, or denied. And this is where the technology dark age lines stops being hyperhull and start becoming legible. I mean, not because innovation would literally seize, it would not. China is a major scientific and also industrial power. We all know this if you follow the trends. But the risk is not different. The risk is that the marginal technological order becomes less open, less contestable, less legally secure, and more politically irrational. The OECD warned that the critical inputs are concentrated and that many economies have few alternatives to more suppliers. The Federal Reserve warned that the dollar global rule rests on stability, deep market openness, property rights, the rule of law. Put those together, and the lesson is obvious. The innovative frontier still performs best where capital can trust courts, firms can trust contracts, researchers can collaborate across allied institutions, and the sea lines between them remain open. That remains a pull off a US led advantage. So here is the bottom line. I mean, Pax Americana is expensive. Yeah, it requires defensive spending for war, deployment, alliance, maintenance, sanctions, enforcement, diplomatic labor, blah, 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 industrial coordinations, crisis management, and domestic willingness to provide public goods that otherwise we trade free ride on. So all of that is true. But the argument that therefore America should imply simply step back mistakes visibly cost for total cost. I mean, the visible cost is the carrier group, the aid package, the base, the patrol, the reserve currency burden, the export currency bureaucracy, the hidden cost of trade is fragmented trade, coercive regional hegemons, forced rearmament by allies, proliferating a nuclear decision, politicized technology, supply chain, a much harsher price on every ton of cargo, and every unit of capital moving through the system. So this is why the slogan "Let other powers balance each other" sounds smart in a seminar and fails in the field, right? Other powers do balance each other, usually by arming faster, coercing similar neighbors, maybe building exclusive zones, weaponizing trade, and probing until somebody miscalculates. So American power at its best does something rare. It creates a large zone in which allies can remain commercially open, politically sovereign, and technologically integrated without each becoming a miniature fortress state. That zone is imperfect. It has seen wars, hypocrisies, and other real failures. But compared with the plausible alternative, it has been astonishingly productive. The World Trade Organization, WTO, trade expansion, dollar liquidity, maritime openness, native tourism, allied technological ecosystem were not disconnected. They are manifestation of the same order. So, and that leads to the final line. I mean, the free world does not need American power because Americans are clinically righteous. It needs American power because the present international systems depends on the state capable of combining military, which financial depth, alliance credibility, technological centrality, and institutional weight that I scale nobody else can currently match. Britain cannot do that right now. I've called it the 20th century. Europe cannot yet do it. And China will not do it on liberal terms. Russia cannot do that at all. Remove the American pillar before another pillar can actually bear the load, and the result is not a gentler world. It's a world in which freedom becomes locally negotiable, trades become regionally extorted, and technology becomes strategically rational. That is the real choice, not empire versus innocence. It's like the vacuum. The vacuum is always hungrier than people think. So